Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames, and not E3 season is nearly upon us. The time of the year when all the companies seem to come together at one point and share what they've been working on and what they got coming, and basically trying to sell you on the second half. Now, things are definitely in a sort of tumultuous time right now with game prices and consoles going up and a brand new system just about to launch with the Switch 2 and all that. And I thought I'd take a moment here to sort of break it down for y'all, since I have, frankly, a lot of experience watching this. Started attending E3 in 2001 all the way till the end. So as someone who's kind of been there, done that, and still loving it, let me give you my thoughts on sort of this is a State of the Union address of where I think companies are, where they're going, and more importantly, this video is going to be what should you expect coming out of both Summer Games Fest and Nintendo Directs, Xbox showcases, what to expect next month from each major first-party publisher. And let's just start with good old Donkey Kong first and Nintendo. So the big rumor right now is that Nintendo will have a Direct either the week of or the week after the Switch 2 launches, which I was a little hesitant or 50-50 on. Like the fact that we're okay, so some people are saying it's actually going to happen. I could see it going both ways, where Nintendo's like, I don't really need to talk about anything. The Switch 2's out. Good luck finding one. But on the other hand, there is a sort of 800-pound gorilla in the room here, which is beyond the treehouse from April. We haven't really seen much of DK Bonanza beyond the intro and the one level demonstration, which normally is like, fine, how much more do you really need? But Nintendo does like to try to have like these sort of staggered information releases of like, here's the announcement of the game, here's the basic gist of the game, and now here's something extra with the game. Like we know from the South Korean Nintendo website that Pauline or someone related to Pauline is involved in Donkey Kong Bonanza, so there's probably some gameplay element there they have yet to reveal, or some story element. We saw that Diddy Kong got a new render in a weird sort of way, where we saw it like updated in some official photos or some official artwork released by Nintendo, which they have not actually shown Diddy Kong in the game yet. So if Nintendo is doing a Direct next month, I actually expect the big things. Here's what you should expect. You should expect release dates for Metroid Prime 4. You should expect a release date for Pokemon Legends Zazazazaza. I think those will get hard lock dates. I think Nintendo's been weird and like I think they're maybe not sure. I don't know if that speaks to any trouble with the games. I don't know. But I think Nintendo's sort of been trying to figure out when does Metroid and when does Pokemon come out. My guess would be Metroid will come out September, October, maybe more October. And I think Pokemon Zazaza will come out in mid-November. That is my guess. So my guesstimate here, Pokemon November, Metroid October, maybe late September. We'll get more info and details on stuff they have not shown or talked about for DK Bonanza. I don't know that they'll be talking about any added games to the NSO. I don't think that'll happen. I think what you will see, both at Summer Games Fest and in a supposed Nintendo Direct, will be a metric ton of third-party ports. You will not see, which unfortunately, this is just kind of the way it goes for the first year of a new console, especially a new Nintendo console. Every third party is a little like shy about, should we put our games on Nintendo? Can we put our games on Nintendo? And then they just give us old ports to sort of tide us over, which is, again, it's one of those weird things where if you look at the Switch 2 launch, and if you somehow didn't have a PS4 ever, or an Xbox One ever, or any of PS5 or an Xbox Series S or X ever, and you never had a gaming-capable PC, you strictly had a Switch for the last 8 plus years, yeah, the Switch 2 lineup's pretty awesome. If you had those systems and you had the opportunity to play almost any of the third-party game coming out, it's kind of like cool, but, kind of able to buy a better-looking running version of the game for a cheaper price than what we're, is being offered. So mileage may vary on that. But anyway, so how does that affect the Nintendo Direct? I think you're going to see a whole lot more third-party port announcements. Unfortunately, I think it'll be some time before we actually see something on the level of Monster Hunter Rise, where a third party makes a concentrated effort to really go, with a third part, with a really not even exclusive, but just made for Switch 2 kind of deal. I actually don't expect this to change. I think this is going to be the whole life. The whole life of the Switch 2 will be dominated by people figuring out if they can downport their PS4 or PS5 games to run on Switch 2, and I think they'll actually be able to in most cases because, again, to beat a dead horse here, PS5 is still mostly PS4 Pro Plus, Pro. So I expect a lot of that. Okay, and here's where I start making some interesting predictions. Now, we saw Duskbloods at the announcement, and will we get an update on Duskbloods? Maybe. My gut says probably not. They'll probably wait a little closer because, again, Duskbloods is not actually a huge scale game. It's sort of a multiplayer side project for FromSoft. But here's the thing. I do think we start actually seeing more actual Nintendo first-party announcements because I've said it before. I think the Switch 2 is playing it a little shy right now. I think we'll actually see footage of Kirby Air Riders. I think that's supposedly coming out this year too, so that might get a release date as well. It'll be somewhere in and around Metroid, between Metroid and Pokemon. More Age of Calamity stuff, of course, but that's also sort of a third-party contract thing with Koei Tecmo. But what I do think here, I do think we're actually going to get some actual announcements. Now, as to what that actually is or pertains to, I'll tell you this right now: not Zelda. You're not seeing the next 3D Zelda get announced. You might see maybe some more Switch 2 upgrade path games. I know a lot of people are really hoping for Xenoblade. I don't really know. I think we'll see a new Fire Emblem, and I think it'll be cross-gen. That is my prediction there. I think we'll see a cross-gen Fire Emblem game. And I think there is a 60% chance that we will get a tease of Monolith Soft's next big project because I do still think Nintendo wants to have that because, again, we'll be when this Direct comes out, Mario Kart World will have just been released. DK Bonanza will be a month away, and then, of course, the fall games. But they have shown a lot of Metroid Prime 4 and a lot of Pokemon Zazaza already. They almost don't need to talk about those games anymore. That's getting a little into the Deathloop territory. So I actually do think Nintendo does need to have a graphical showpiece for the Switch 2. Because frankly, honestly, Mario Kart World, not a graphical showpiece really. It's cool and it's open world and they're doing some neat stuff. And DK, again, very neat stuff. It's a very nice looking game. The sort of terrain destruction is very cool, Red Faction Gorilla. But nothing is like, oh my God, this is so far beyond what the Switch do. Because again, you look back, Mario Odyssey is still a pretty nice looking game, and Mario 3D World, Bowser's Fury, those are nice looking games. They ain't bad looking. And I'm not saying that DK looks only as good as Bowser's Fury. It looks better than those games, trust me. But I also think it's not worlds better right now. So, and again, Duskbloods looks like every FromSoft game they've made for the past 15 years. FromSoft is all art, no tech. I think Nintendo probably wants to have a showstopper graphical showpiece, a sort of the original very first Xenoblade X trailer, if you will, where you'd show off, oh my God, look how big the world is. You've got a mech, you can fly around. So I think there's a not small chance, 60%. I think Monolith Soft actually shows a product. Now, it won't be coming out anytime soon. This is not for something coming out this year. This is something coming out middle to late next year. But I do think that there is a decent chance that Nintendo's like, okay, well, system's out now. Here it is. You already know about all the sort of launch games. You know about all the little upgrade games for Switch 2 editions. But what you don't know is how crazy some of the stuff we're cooking in the background is. So there's my prediction right there is I actually think we get Monolith Soft's next game tease. I think we get release dates for Prime 4. We get release dates for Pokemon. We get a cross-gen Fire Emblem game. We actually, and I think we also, I also think in this Direct, we also get updates on games that are primarily just Switch 1 games. They'll run on Switch 2, but I think they're actually going to be like, don't worry, if you couldn't get a Switch 2, we still have plenty of good stuff. So I actually do think we'll get Switch 1 game announcements, even from Nintendo. So I think that's going to be in there. I think we'll, and again, I think we'll actually see like a big showpiece game from Monolith Soft. I think it's possible. Miller on the 40%, but I think it's entirely possible they do a very, very brief tease for Animal Crossing. I think it's very possible. Their second best-selling game on the system for the Switch 1. I think it's entirely possible we get a very, very tiny tease that, yes, there is a new Animal Crossing. It is coming, but we'll share details way later. I think what they won't tease will not be teasing a new Splatoon, not yet. Other thing is, I predict no Smash Brothers. Again, Kirby Air Riders is coming. Sakurai's busy. There's nothing. I think we hear nothing on Smash. So there's my prediction of Nintendo. So we can boil this all down. I'll be making a bingo card and a bingo card video later, but I'm just going to say this right now. Dates for Prime 4 and Pokemon. A tease. Monolith Soft's new project is a graphical showpiece, possibly an ender. A cross-gen Fire Emblem game. Switch 1 game announcements that will naturally be compatible on Switch 2. A tease for Animal Crossing, a very tiny tease. Nothing on Smash, nothing on Splatoon, probably nothing on Luigi's Mansion 4 or anything from Next Level Games yet. Maybe a little too early for all that. So that's my predictions there. That's my that's what I would expect next month from that. And it'll be interesting. We can come back to this video and see how right or wrong I was on it. So, but let's talk about the poor, badgered, but somehow most super successful Sony. So rumor going right now, Sony will have a state of play in June. Like, it was maybe a showcase, but maybe they've decided to settle on just a state of play. Word on the street, and again, we're kind of going on rumors here, is that both Marathon and Fair Games are in serious trouble. Both Marathon and Fair Games had like internal alpha tests. Both were received very poorly. Feedback has not been great. They found that they stole art assets from Marathon, using in textures and stuff, and Bungie's trying to make good on that. But it's been a disaster. Arc Raiders has already stolen Marathon's lunch in a very Dragon Ball Fighters versus Marvel versus Capcom Infinite way. Arc Raiders is stealing the thunder from Marathon right from under Sony. And what is Fair Games? Fair Games is described as Fortnite meets an extraction shooter. Blech. The main producer, Jade Raymond, who, famous industry vet, has already left the studio that's making the game. It's been silent for years. So 2 more major live service pushes from Sony are seemingly in huge trouble. And the desecration of the PlayStation catalog by Jim Ryan continues. And apparently, as much as this lizard man human has driven the PlayStation, pipeline off rails, Herman Hulst, his replacement, has seemingly just sort of watched it happen. Granted, this is kind of speaking from a place of rumors and conjecture here, but there is a large number of live service projects we know have been canceled by Sony, and their two next ones are looking like they're coming out very poorly. They're not being received well. And what does Sony have on its plate? Well, of course, it has Ghost of Yotei, which is coming out October 2nd. So we have again, once again, Sony is literally repeating its mistakes of a year ago, where here's our major live service push. It's flopping, it's dying before it's released. It's DOA, and not the fighting game. But here's this other single-player game that everyone's really excited for coming out like 10 days later. So they're doing the same thing again with Marathon and Ghost of Yotei, and it's not looking good for Marathon, but it is looking good for Ghost of Yotei. So if Sony does do a state of play next month, what do I expect? I expect actual gameplay of Ghost of Yotei. I actually do, because both trailers have been extremely cinematically focused. You can kind of grab little bits and pieces of the gameplay from them, but they're very cinematically focused. They're not showing you what you really want, And as far as Marathon, I do think at a state of play, this is going to be really, really interesting, because I do think Sony tries to ignore all the noise, and I do think they do try to give a final push for Marathon. I think they will announce an open beta for Marathon for July or August, and I think that is going to completely determine the fate of the game. So I think Sony will try to give one more push for this money pit they've sunk in, and see if Marathon can gain any positive traction in July or August with an open beta. They did do this for Marathon. They did do this, yes, and Marathon lasted 10 days on the market. But I do think that if it tracks really poorly, like people do not download, people do not play the open beta, and those that do don't have anything much positive to say about it, I think Sony may just pull the plug on Marathon. I think Sony may just pull the plug a lot, in general, on Bungie. $3 billion down the drain. I'm not saying they're going to shut Bungie down, no, but I think Bungie gets reduced and reshuffled and reorganized, and they basically go into like a sort of survival mode to make Destiny 3. So my prediction is Sony will give one last shot at Marathon and then and hope for the best. I think Ghost of Yotei will get a full gameplay trailer. I think Sony might try to announce something that's hopefully not a live service game to sort of, hey, here's some cool new thing. I think the best, and it's probably the best thing for Sony to do right now, is try to get the conversation going for something completely new and different in a positive manner, where it's like, hey, here's a project we've had, that's been worked on, and maybe Wolverine's that game. Maybe all Sony really needs to do is just show everyone the progress on the Wolverine game, and just get the conversation going on something completely different. Just forget about the woes and the rumors and all the weird stuff in the background. And maybe that's what they need to do. I hope they do that. I also expect there will be a bunch of third-party games you do not care about. Again, my precedent for here is like, remember that weird game with like a guy in like a weird jumpsuit walking around, and it's just a game about a dude stumbling around. Remember that game? Yeah. Remember Little Devil Inside? Yeah. Remember Dinosaur High? Yeah. Sony has this weird penchant for like, hey, let's introduce a weird indie game none of you are going to care about and then never speak of it again. So, yeah, I expect there'll be some very bizarre, weird indie, sort of halfway indie games that Sony will try to say, like, we're for the people, we're for the little guy, but they're really not. I also think that Sony will try to steer the narrative away with the State of Play with a big third-party announcement. And my guess would be Capcom. Maybe this is like, okay, RE9, something like that. Like, they're going to try to sort of, again, shift all the negativity away from all the stuff coming out about Marathon and Fair Games, and I think they're going to maybe try to have some big franchise announcement game, and I think RE9 is possibly that game. So I think that's going to happen, or it could be possibly like a big Konami project, maybe like a new big 3D Castlevania or something. But I do think Sony's going to try to have either an update, like say Wolverine. I think there will be like some Wolverine, some Sony first party announcement, a final push for Marathon, gameplay of Ghost of Yotei, some indie game or two you don't care about, not even indie fans care about, and some weird, and then some big third-party announcement. That is my prediction for Sony State of Play, if it is true and it's happening in June. You heard it here first. We'll see if anything I just said comes to pass, but that is my gist on Sony. And lastly, we got to talk about the one that everyone loves to shit on, but is actually had an absolutely stellar year, and that, of course, is Microsoft. And what is Microsoft going to do now that their first 6 months have been absolutely incredible? Like, I don't care who you are, I don't care where your console allegiances lie. I'm an adult. I don't have console allegiances because I'm not a child or the mentality of a child. I play and enjoy everything where I can. What do I think Microsoft does to follow up an incredible 6 months? They had an incredible 6 months. That was my point I was getting at there. I think it's the big one for me, of course, is Fable. And they've been working on it and teasing it forever. And I really love Fable 2. I enjoyed Fable 3. 1 was a little too corridory for my taste for Fable 1, but still a good game. So I think if Microsoft can sort of lay up or go for the 2-pointer here, for having such a great first half of the year, I think a big thing is like, okay, give Fable a solid release date, show it off. Hopefully it's this year, and hopefully it's really good. There are still a ton of Xbox projects that have gone really silent. Clockwork Revolution was one of them. I don't think Perfect Dark is anywhere near ready. If we're going again off the sort of the dev hell rumor of that game, but I think they should really headline with like, hey, Fable's here and Fable's looking hot. And then, of course, you got more Ninja Gaiden 4. I think Ninja Gaiden 4 and Fable alone, just those two, that's already like a pretty good, solid look at, start to a fall lineup. And I think the best thing they could do would be to follow up with something like Ninja Gaiden 4, whether it's a collab or just a sort of announcement where get a big Japanese game announcement at your Xbox showcase. And I'm going to go a little bold with Microsoft here. I think, call me crazy, and I probably am. I think Microsoft announces a very nothing burger teaser, just basically key art. Persona 6 gets announced at Xbox Showcase, further cementing Microsoft's commitment to having Japanese games on their system, and to have a big oh shit moment. The other thing they could possibly do would be a Silk Song Shadow drop in June, which I don't expect to happen because I don't even know if that game's real anymore. But yeah, I think my predictions for Xbox are Fable gets a release date this year. Ninja Gaiden 4 gets a release date. And I think they announced Persona 6. I'm going big on this prediction. I think they want to have a big, massive Japanese game announcement. And they're probably not going to get Final Fantasy or Square Enix or anything like that. They've been really chummy with Sega and Atlas for years now. And the reason I don't think Square Enix will be, there is because I think Square Enix will probably, whatever they announce will be at the Summer Games Fest show. And Microsoft will be, okay. Because remember, Microsoft also had that moment where they announced Devil May Cry 5 at their show, and it was such a big deal. It was a great reveal. So I think Microsoft likes to have those moments, likes to have people remember those moments. So will we get announcements at the Xbox show about PS5 games or Switch 2 games? No, with an asterisk. They may show trailers or whatever for, say, Fable or Ninja Gaiden, and it'll just be like on Xbox, and then at the very end of the trailer you'll just see, you'll see like a Switch 2 logo or like a PS5 logo. They're going to be very coy about it. They're not going to hide it any longer, I think they're going to be a little more open, but I don't think they're going to hide it. I think Starfield will get a bunch of updates. They may announce a PS5 version, but I don't know if announcing a PS5 version, I don't think a PS5 version gets announced in an Xbox showcase. I think it gets announced at the Sony State of Play. I think that's where you see a Starfield announcement. But I do think there may be updates to the game or something. I don't know if now is the time for an Elder Scrolls 6 update. I don't know. I frankly don't care. I think they just, I think it's still too far off. I don't think that's happening. I think it's more likely to get another Perfect Dark trailer than an Elder Scrolls 6 trailer, personally speaking. But yeah, these are my predictions for Microsoft. Release date for Fable, release date for Ninja Gaiden 4, Persona 6 gets announced, a bunch of big gets for Game Pass. I think you start seeing other game consoles in the end of their trailers listed. I think that happens. And as far as I'm trying to think of any first party surprises. I don't know. I think a game like Clockwork Revolution, I'll just say that's probably going to show up. And I think Microsoft will actually have a pretty decent showcase. I hope they can do something even a little more crazy first party wise to really sort of one up the first half of the year. I think that would be fantastic. Something wonderful on the surprise scale of South of Midnight or Claire Obscure like they did last year. So I'm hoping they can find another really cool game to do that. And I think there are some possibilities there that are coming out of China actually or Korea. This would also be a great place to show off Liza P, DLC, give that a release date or something at the Xbox Showcase. I think that's where it's going to happen because Liza P was a super successful game that started, had its launch on Game Pass and didn't hurt at all. In fact, it helped it. So maybe NeoWiz's next game gets announced. That's my last prediction for Microsoft. Maybe Liza P sequel or next game gets announced, whether it's the Wizard of Oz game or whatever. So I think that's what's going to happen at Microsoft. So those are my predictions for the big guys at Summer Game. Not necessarily Summer Games, but just not E3 season because Nintendo's Direct will be on its own. Xbox Showcase will be on its own. Sony State of Play will be on its own. And then, of course, you'll have the Summer Games Fest in the middle. And I'll talk about Summer Games Fest in another video because that's basically third-party focused, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, those are my predictions for Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Let's come back. Let's reconvene in a month, see where I was, and let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the channel. Later, dudes.